Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's hearing. Today we're going to hear evidence from one of the building control inspectors with the Royal Borough of Kensington and Chelsea, who was concerned with the refurbishment of Grenfell Tower. Yes, Mr. Millett.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I now call Mr. John Hoban, please.
I swear by Almighty God that the evidence I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hoban. Would you like to sit down and make yourself comfortable? Now, Mr. Hoban, before I invite Mr. Millett to put some questions to you, there are just a couple of things I would like to say. The first is, I understand that there are things you'd like to say to the people who were affected by the fire. You will be given an opportunity to do that, and I think it would probably be most convenient if you were to do that at the end of your evidence, all right? But we'll make sure you get that chance.
Thank you.
The other thing is that we have a break during the morning and during the afternoon in any event. But if you feel that you need a break from time to time, would you just indicate that to me and we can ensure that it happens?
I will.
Good. Thank you very much. Yes, Mr. Millett.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. Mr. Hoban, good morning.
Good morning.
Can I start by thanking you very much for coming to the inquiry and assisting us with your evidence in our investigations. If you have any difficulty understanding the questions that I'm asking you, I'm happy to repeat the question or put the question in a different way. Can I also ask you to keep your voice up so that the transcriber who sits to your right can get down your evidence onto the transcript? And add that if you nod or shake your head, that doesn't go onto the transcript, so you have to say yes or no, as the case may be. If you need a break, as you've heard from the chairman, at any time other than the scheduled breaks that we plan to take during the morning and the afternoon, please just indicate and we can take a break. Now, you've made two witness statements for the inquiry, I think. They are in a folder on your desk, and you've also made a police statement, which I'm going to take you to as well. Can I ask you to go to your first statement, please? That's Rbkc 3033934. Is that your first statement, dated the 30th of November 2018?
Yes, it is.
Can you go to page 12, please? Is that your signature?
It is.
Now, you've also provided exhibits JEH 1 to 5 with that statement, and just for the transcript, no need to turn them up. Those are Rbkc 3033936 to Rbkc 3033931, inclusive. Can I ask you, have you read this statement recently, Mr. Hoban?
I have.
Thank you. And can you confirm that the contents are true?
Yes.
Can I now take you to your second statement? This is at Rbkc 3050416. This is dated the 9th of July 2019. Is that your second statement?
It is.
Can we please go to page 24?
Yes.
Where you'll see a signature above the date. Is that your signature?
Yes, it is.
Now, you've also provided exhibits JEH 6 and JEH 7 with that statement, and their references are Rbkc 3050415 and Rbkc 3050414, respectively. There's no need to look at those. I'm just reading those into the record. Have you read this, your second statement, recently?
I have.
Thank you. And can you confirm that the contents are true?
Yes. I would say that at the time of writing this statement, I didn't have access to various documents at the time, so my answers would be more detailed now with some of the information that I've got in my possession now.
Very good. Well, we'll see how we go with that. Now, the inquiry also has a copy of the draft statement provided by the Metropolitan Police, but not signed by you. But as I understand it, there are some corrections which you have made to it. And that should be in your witness bundle in front of you. It's at HOB 50218. Now, if you would just look at that, we can see from the front page that it's not been signed. And we understand from your legal representatives that you annotated this statement and returned it to the Metropolitan Police on the 14th of February 2018. Is that right?
Yes.
If you go back, please, to be shown Rbk 3033934, this is your first inquiry statement. Can I ask you to go to page 1, paragraph 2?
Yes.
You say there, as per the witness statement protocol, I confirm that I have provided a statement to the police regarding this matter. Although I have yet to formally sign that statement, I confirm that to the best of my recollection, the matters stated within that statement are true and accurate. I consent for that statement to be disclosed to the public inquiry. Is the annotated statement that we've just looked at, or just referred to, HOB 50219, the statement that you're referring to there?
Could you repeat the numbers, please? Sorry.
Yes, it's HOB 50219. We could put that up on the screen in front of you.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. You have made some amendments to it. Can I show you one of those? I just asked you to confirm something. If you would be shown page 11 in this document, please. You'll see that at about a quarter of the way down, there's a paragraph break which starts, I was aware new windows were being fitted. Do you see that? Do you see that? About a fifth of the way down, there's a paragraph indentation and then a line that starts, I was aware.
Oh, yes, yes.
Thank you. Now, if you go down a little bit, 4 lines from that, you say, as far as I can recall, I went up on the hoist on 3 occasions.
That's incorrect.
Can you explain what you mean there, what you would like that to say?
6 occasions, as far as I can recall.
I see. 6 occasions, but 3 occasions with Cass, I think.
Yes, I believe so.
Right. Subject to that correction, and you'll see also that there are some parts, perhaps you can explain, there are parts of this statement in red and parts in green. Could you just explain for us what you indicate by the red and the green?
I can't exactly remember. One was that I wanted something taken out.
Yes.
And the other colour was I wanted it included.
As we understand it, the green was to go out and the red was to come in. Would that be right?
Yes.
And just for an example of that, while we're on this page, just to be absolutely accurate, if you look down this page to about 2/5 of the way down, you'll see that the first red addition there, or first red words, can be found in the line, there are no specific guidelines for, and then you've added in red, this council's building control surveyors.
Correct.
So that's an addition you would wish to make?
Yes.
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 So all the reds are additions you would wish to make, and the greens are those to go out. Thank you very much. Subject to that, Mr. Hoban, can you confirm that the contents of this statement are, with those corrections, are true to the best of your knowledge and belief?
There's one further amendment at the end.
Yes, if you can turn to the last page, please.
No, not that. Sorry, not that page. Yes, there's a comma. Sorry, bear with me.
Well, if it's a comma, then we may be able to find it later,
All right.
rather than interrupt. This is important.
It's in relation to fire safety regulatory reform order. There's what it indicates is it should all read as one paragraph and not just fire safety and then the regulatory.
Very well. Well, subject to that potential correction, which we'll find during the break, can you confirm that this statement is true to the best of your belief and that you adopted as your evidence?
Yes, I do.
Thank you very much. Finally, on this, there are some exhibits with your police statement. Just for the transcript, these are MET 3071032 to MET 3071033. And that's in the record now. Final question on this. Have you discussed the evidence that you're going to give today with anybody before coming here?
Just my counsel.
Right. And when you say just your counsel, do I take it that you didn't discuss the substance of the evidence you're going to give?
Oh, no, no.
Thank you. I'm going to start with some questions about your qualifications, Mr. Hoban, if I may. Your qualifications and experience are set out, I think, in your CV, which you exhibited as JEH 6 to your second witness statement. Can we look at that? It's RBK 3050415, please. You won't find that in the
I won't.
file. No, look on the screen.
Yes.
Is that your CV?
Can we scroll up? Look,
That's the first page of it.
right.
And we can see from that that you...
Yeah,
under
I've
professional-
signed it. Yes.
Yes.
That is my CV.
At the bottom left, right-hand corner, bottom right, that's your signature.
Yes.
Now, we can see that you have a BTEC Ordinary Certificate in Building Studies, which you obtained in 1982,
Yes.
and a BTEC Higher Certificate in Building Studies obtained in 1985.
Yes.
Yes. Now, am I right that your professional experience includes working as a junior technical officer in the Building Regulations Division and later than that a technical assistant in the District Surveyors Service of the Greater London Council?
Yes.
And that was from 1979 to 1986.
Yes.
And since 1986, up to the end of March 2017, you worked, I think, as a senior building control surveyor at the Royal Borough of Kensington and Chelsea.
Yes.
And you have no other professional qualifications, I think.
No. I'm an associate member of the Association of Building Engineers.
Yes. And am I right that you effectively worked your way up from a junior position?
Correct.
Yes. And retired on the 31st of March 2017?
I resigned.
Resigned. Was there any particular reason why you resigned?
Yes.
Can you tell us very briefly what those are?
I resigned because I had enough. I wasn't able to do the job that how I was trained to do, and it was affecting my health, and I just decided that I didn't want to work there anymore.
Right. Okay. Well, we may come back to that later on. On page 2 of your CV, if we just go to that while we have it on the screen, you explain your role at Rbkc. And you set it out at some length for much of that page. Can I just summarise that for people watching? Is it right that you dealt with building regulation applications, which included review of documents and site visits?
Correct.
And you gave general and specific advice on building regulations matters? Yes?
Yes.
Yes. And advised junior colleagues?
Yes.
And you dealt with inquiries from building professionals and the public?
Yes.
Yes. And also investigated dangerous structures where you were asked to do that?
Yes.
Yes. And liaising with other colleagues and departments and statutory bodies such as the LFEPA?
Yes.
Yes. Now, I'm going to come later on to examine with you your role within the department, the Building Control Department at Rbkc. Can you just confirm that at the time you were allocated to the Grenfell Tower project, in the latter part of 2013, and more accurately we'll look at in a moment, you had about 35 years' experience as a building control surveyor in central London?
Yes.
Yes. Now, you mentioned professional memberships, and you said you were an associate member of the Association of Building Engineers. Is that right?
Yes.
And also an associate member of the Chartered Association of Building Engineers. Are they different or the same organisation?
The association got chartership, so it changed from being an association, and they got chartered association.
So the ABE became the CABE?
Correct.
Right. And what did you do anything, but like an exam or an interview, to become an associate member of the Chartered Association of Building Engineers?
I filled in an application form, and I sent my CV in, and that's the level of membership that they gave me at that time.
Right. Right. And when was that? Can you remind me?
I think it was. Sorry.
Yes, you do say on page 1,
Yeah,
January
July.
2013.
Yeah.
And
2013.
Yes.
So.
As a member of the CABE, were you required to undertake CPD, continuing professional development?
There was no actual standard set out for my grade of officer.
Right.
But I did take CBD.
You did?
CBD.
We'll come to that. You say there was no standard, or actual standard set out for your grade of officer. What was your grade of officer?
I was an associate member.
Right. And did you keep any... did they lay on any seminars or conferences for you to attend?
We had in-house seminars from time to time.
Right.
In the office, and I did attend other training. I went on a day course prior to becoming a member for the Chartered Institute. I also attended a day course at Wandsworth Town Hall when Part M of the building regulations got changed. I went on that.
Those were courses organised by the Institute, were they? Or the association?
No.
Or were they organised by Rbkc?
They weren't organised by Rbkc. The Institute one, yes, for the membership, that was organised by the actual Institute itself,
right,
which I attended, I think it was in 2012. The one relating to Part M, I saw it somewhere and I asked my line manager if I could attend.
Right. Based on your professional experience and years of service, were you eligible for one of the higher grades of membership of the CABE?
I would have to take a professional or take an examination. It
right.
could be through interview, and I would have to put a thesis together.
I see. Why didn't you go through those hoops?
At the time, I was looking after my mother. I was her carer.
I follow. And what prompted you to become an associate member of the CABE in 2014?
I knew they were changing the rules. It was going to be they were setting the bar higher as regard for membership. So I was told that. So I applied. It was my intention to go mature applicant's entrance, but as I say, because I was looking after my mother, that took up a considerable amount of my time.
Yes,
and I never did that.
Yes, I see. Can I then turn to CPD and training within Rbkc, which we touched on a moment ago? In that role at Rbkc, were you required to undertake training?
Yes.
Yes. Now, Rbkc has provided your training records to the inquiry, and I just want to show you those. RBK 305014, please. Page 1 is the first page of that, and I want to look at page 2. This is your training record. Mm-hmm. And at page 2, we can see that your records go back to January 1999. You can see at the bottom there, NLP Diploma Workshop Part 1 Training Centre, 29th of January 1999. So that's when they started. And if we can scroll up to the first page, we can see that according to this record, they end on the 7th of November 2016. Do you see that?
Yes.
Are you able to tell us whether this record covers all internal training that you undertook at Rbkc during this period?
No, it doesn't.
Right. What else? What does it not cover?
As I say, I attended outside courses. We also had in-house seminars from time to time that were organised.
And those aren't on this record?
They're not.
Are they on other records?
I would have had handwritten records at the time, but I don't believe they're available now.
Right. So you would have had them. Were they yours or were they Rbkc's?
They were mine.
They were yours. And you don't have them now. Can you explain why not?
When I left, I no longer kept them.
Right. So you kept them in the office?
Yes.
And left the office and now don't have access to them?
Correct.
I see.
There was other as I say, we would when regulation or new approved documents came in, we would have in-house lunchtime seminars on the changes to the building regulations.
Right. You would have in-house seminars. We'll come back to that in a moment, but just on this document, your internal records, I think, indicate that you had training on matters which aren't directly relevant to building control. So, for example, if you look halfway down page 1, you get training on the local government pension scheme 2014 pension changes.
Yes.
Is that right? That you would have training on all kinds of things that weren't directly part of your job?
Yes.
And if you look at the work right training you undertook in February 2015, you can see that there are a number of entries there for the 18th of February 2015, including stress awareness, manual handling, mobile workers, etc. Was that specific to building control, or was that just more general training?
That was for the council.
That was for the council. When you say that was for the council, was that, what does that mean?
It was a requirement that officers did these work rights training courses, and that was automatically registered onto the system when you completed the actual course.
I see.
Well, that's my understanding.
I follow. In the last but one of those work right entries, we can see work right fire safety awareness training. Was that to do with the building regulations and your role as a building surveyor and control officer?
That was general, or as far as I can recall, that was to general fire safety awareness.
I see.
In the office.
Looking a little lower down the same page, we can see that there is a ComplyWise fire safety program on which you get 100% as an online grade on the 1st of June 2010.
Yes.
Did that relate to your role as a building control surveyor?
Not that I'm aware of. I couldn't be certain.
Looking at page 1 as a whole, Mr. Hoban, which spans a period from March 2009 to November 2016, do any of these courses or meetings or seminars relate to your role as a building control surveyor?
Dangerous structure training.
Yes, I see. Anything else?
Not there.
Right. You mentioned lunchtime seminars provided by Rbkc,
yes,
specifically on the building regulations.
Yeah.
Did you have any internal training on approved documents?
Yes, as and when they came out,
right.
or there was amendments.
I see. Who delivered that training?
It was generally managers in the office.
Right. Can you remember getting any specific training on approved document B?
Yes, it would be some years ago.
Yes.
When the new document came out. We also had in-house training when there was changes to the regulations, I believe in 2010.
Yes. And who delivered those? Managers again?
Managers again.
Can you give us some names?
Would be John Jackson,
right,
and Mr. Gammon, Mr. David Gammon.
David Gammon, right.
Believe.
And who would receive those training courses or seminars?
Surveyors.
Right. I see. Did you get training on any aspect of approved document B in particular, or on approved document B generally?
As I say, we would talk about amendments. We go through the amendments when they came out, and discuss them. Likewise, when there was a community's performance standards, we had I can recall having a afternoon seminar on that.
Did you get any training at any stage on technical industry guidance? For example, the CWC standard?
No.
What about the Building Control Alliance? technical notes?
No.
Right. Well, we may come back to those shortly. Can we just look at another record for your personal development or training? Rbk 3048696, please. And this is your, at page 6, your personal development plan. If we can go to page 6 in that document, we can see that this is from 2014 through to 2015, July 14 to February 15. And if you look at item 1, it says, keep up to date with changes in the building regulations, etc. It is expected that there will be a number of changes before May 2015 due to the findings of the Housing Standards Review. Date with this will be achieved February 15. Progress will look through draft proposals for ADH, ADM, ADQ, etc. Do you know who came up with the goals for your selected personal development plan in particular?
It would be the line manager that did my performance review.
Was that John Allen at this time?
What is the date of this one again, please?
Well, this is a running record, and this
Yeah.
covers this period.
15, yes, this would be John Allen.
I see. And were those goals selected because you were not up to date with the building regulations?
No, they were new documents that came in. That were amendments at that time.
I see. So do we take from that answer that every surveyor in your position or at your level in Rbkc's building control department would have been told as a development goal to keep up to date with the changes in the building regulations?
I believe so, but I wouldn't have direct knowledge of what their personal development plan was.
If you look down at item 5, it says, provide training opportunities to support CPD requirements of professional associations. Rbkc commitment to provide 2 days training per year. Did Rbkc fulfil that commitment?
There would have been a certain amount of lunchtime seminars, so I don't know whether that would have mounted up to 2 days, but it was considered acceptable to read professional magazines and other information on the regulations. That was considered training as regards the two days training.
Now, you told us that your membership, your associate membership of the CABE didn't have a CPD requirement. Did that mean that you didn't take advantage or weren't required to take advantage of the 2 days training per year offered by Rbkc to support membership?
No, I as I say, I would read documents,
Right.
and magazines, and
Right. Now, you say in your second statement that you attended seminars which you paid for yourself.
Yes.
And you attended those on your own time. Did you keep any records of those?
yes,
Where are those records? Do you know?
I can obtain them for you.
Have you been asked for those documents before?
Not that I'm aware of.
Right. Are they in your personal possession?
At home, I would check. I would think I can get copies.
Right. From memory, can you tell us whether any of those seminars which you paid for yourself covered approved document B?
It may have formed part of the day. I can't recall that far back.
Right. Did any of those seminars cover things like fire performance on external wall constructions or fire safety classification of materials to be used in external wall constructions?
No, not that I'm aware of.
All right. Now, if we look at your second witness statement, please. Rbk 3040696. 50416. I'd like to look at page 1, paragraph 3. You do identify one of these seminars as one operated by ABE, and you say that one of the seminars was on means of escape, BS 9999, and that's fire safety in the design and management of use of buildings, code of practice. That relates to non-residential buildings, I think, doesn't it?
Yes, that was after I left Kensington.
Yes, and it's the 11th of June 2017.
Yeah.
Yes. Why were you attending a seminar on that matter at that time?
It was my intention to go back into building control once I left the council.
Right. I see. So you were keeping yourself up to date?
Correct.
I follow. Now, if we go back to your appraisal and personal development plan a little bit later on, it's a slightly different document. Rbk 48753. We can go to page 3 in that. That records you as, this is under targets, records that at page 3 there you attend a seminar by John Allen on the 22nd of September 2015. If you look under mid-year comments, second item down, do you see that?
Yes.
What did that seminar cover?
I can't recall.
Right. And it says just above that, attended training by LABC on date to be supplied by JEH. What did that cover? Well, did it happen? I think is the first question.
Sorry, I can't recall.
Right. Do you remember having any training by the LABC in your time at Rbkc?
The only thing that comes to mind is whether this, in relation to Part M, whether that was, which I attended at Wandsworth Town Hall.
Right.
That would, I would think that would reflect that particular time.
Yeah.
Because as I say, they introduced considerable amendments to the old Part M.
Right. And other parts as well, I think.
Yes.
But not B.
Not B.
Can we look at Rbk 48852, please? And this is your Triborough Appraisal and Personal Development Plan 2016 to 17. And if you go to page 2, please, you can see there that under targets, it says that there are normally 5 targets. And if you look down there, you can see in the bottom right-hand corner, under success criteria, there are 8 examples to be provided of professional development. And those are to be provided by February 2017. And you can see that one of those was building control related courses. You see that?
Yes.
Did you achieve that?
I would have attended some in-house seminars.
I see. Anything, but not outside?
Not that I'm aware of.
And on those building control related courses provided in-house, did any of those specifically at that time cover approved document B or industry guidance?
I can't recall.
Right. Did you attend any technical seminars or CPD activities in the period 2011 to 2016? In other words, just before and after, before and during your involvement with Grenfell?
So I would attend in-house seminars, as I say, and read magazines.
Right.
I mentioned that course that I went on relating to Part M. We did have a company come in and give us a presentation on under Part P.
Right.
As well.
Did any of the training that you got here, which is indicated by this document, cover the requirements of Part B of the building regulations or approved document B?
I remember when the when the Regulation 38 came in, we had and there was other amendments at the time, and we had a seminar or in-house training at the time. I think that was about 2010 actually when that came in, and we went through generally the changes in the regulations at that stage.
I see. Did that or any of these seminars cover overcladding of high-rise residential buildings at all?
No.
Now, if we go to your second witness statement, please, at page 2, you also refer to seminars there. But if we look at paragraph 4, little Roman 3, right at the top of the page, you say, attending from time to time seminars provided by manufacturers and other organisation relating to building regulation matters.
Yes.
Have you ever attended seminars by, and these are examples, Celotex?
I may have some years ago, considerably some time ago.
Right. Can you just help us a bit with your
Yeah.
memory on that? Roughly when do you think you attended a seminar given by Celotex?
It may have been 2005, something like that. Some time
Right.
previously.
And do you remember what the subject of the seminar was or presentation?
It was mainly to do with thermal conductivity, I believe.
Right. What about Kingspan? Did you ever attend a seminar given by Kingspan?
I can't recall.
Right. What about a company called Alcoa, later Arconic?
No.
Siderize?
No.
When Celotex gave the seminar or presentation that you've referred to, did they come direct into the council offices?
They were lunchtime seminars that were set up by one of the managers who was responsible for doing that. And what would happen was they would invite architects and surveyors in, and it would be lunch would be given, sandwich sort of buffet, and then it would be a presentation between an hour and an hour and a half, just going through generally the product.
Was it common for manufacturers of building products to come to Rbkc's building control department and make seminars or presentations about their product?
There would be a number of in-house seminars. For further details on that, we had what was known as the Rbkc Building Control News, and it would list out. It was a newsletter, and that would list forthcoming lunchtime seminars.
Right.
I don't know who that was sent to. It was printed out, and I don't know whether it was emailed. Somebody else was responsible for that.
And over what years do you remember receiving Rbkc news?
From when it started, I believe some year. It would be about 2000, something like that.
Right.
It was a newsletter, I believe, produced by Paul Hanson, and it would be, as I say, it would be what was going on as regards building control. It would sometimes give a profile of a surveyor. It would sometimes give guidance on certain aspects of the building regulations for architects and surveyors.
Yes. How frequently did it come out?
I'm not certain. As I say, I looked at this information prior to coming here, and there would be there was a number of them. It would go generally spring. I don't know whether there was other editions.
Right. You say it was produced by Paul Hanson. Did the Rbkc News, or the editions that you saw, have a particular emphasis on fire safety?
It would call up fire safety in relation to sometimes domestic properties. I believe there was some advice on fire curtains. Sometimes it would give a profile of, as I say, the surveyors, and it would sometimes give trying to think of the correct words. Sorry. It would give like a page case study of a particular project.
Looking a little bit further down this page in front of us, Little Roman 4, you say reading technical literature and other information relating to products or systems. Did that include Celotex RS 5000 insulation board, for example?
Yes. When I was dealing with the project, I looked that information up.
Right. Well, we'll come back to that in a little bit more detail later on. Did it include product literature produced by Kingspan in respect of K15 cool firm insulation?
I may have looked at that at another time in relation to U values.
I see. What about TP10?
Again, it would have been if I had. It wasn't at the time of Grenfell. It would have been prior. If I was looking for a U value requirement in relation to an extension.
And what about Rain-O-Bond ACM rain screen panels, particularly PE rain screen panels produced by Accolade?
I looked at the BBA certificate for Rain-O-Bond at the time of I believe I did at the time of when I was dealing with the Grenfell Tower project.
You did you?
Yes.
Right. Well, we'll certainly come back to that later on. Did you ever read product literature relating to siderized rain screen cavity barriers, do you think?
Yeah. Yes.
Again, was that at the time of the Grenfell project?
Yes.
I see. Now, you say in Roman 7 on the same page that you would contact technical departments of manufacturers and product providers when I needed advice on such matters. Did you do that at any time in respect of any product used on the Grenfell Tower?
Not that I'm aware of.
I see. When, just going back to the practices within Rbkc for a moment, was there any system or practice within Rbkc where if someone else other than you went to a seminar or a conference, they would share what they learnt with the rest of the team?
Sometimes. It wasn't consistent.
No, I understand. The reason I ask is that Jose Anon, if that's how you pronounce his name,
Yes.
who was the Deputy Building Control Manager under John Allen, says at paragraph 13 that would happen. But you, I think, recall that, do you? Happening from time to time.
Well, I know when I went on the Part M one, I actually gave a presentation, I think, to the office on that, to actually the planners as well.
I find.
We used to have every so often, I think it was once a month, we'd have a planning stroke building control meeting.
Right.
And I do recall giving a presentation on what I had learnt at that seminar.
Yes.
to planners and my colleagues.
Very well. I just need to read a reference in. The reference to Mr. Anon's statement is RBK 3029897, and the reference is paragraph 13 is at page 3. I don't need to show you that, but building on your last answer, can I show you a document? RBK 401221, please. Now, this is a set of minutes of the London District Surveyors Association General Meeting on the 15th of October 2015, Mr. Hoban, time at 10 o'clock.
Yes.
Now, you can see who was there and the councils they represented.
Yeah.
And you can see that Kensington and Chelsea was represented by Jose Anon. And if you go to page 4, you can see that there, at the very end of the large box, just above paragraph 11 LABC, PC, it says, has a large office building, 9 stories, that has PIR cladding as opposed to rock wool insulation over 18 metres high, BCA Technical Guide 18. At the LABC conference last year, there was a presentation on this subject, and the cladding has to be of limited combustibility, but Kingspan confirmed that their PIR insulation does burn. PC attended a recent LFB seminar and advised that their smoke control guide and suppression system guide are due soon. In addition, 9999 and 9991 revisions are due next year. Now, you weren't there. My question is, did anybody at Rbkc attend the LABC conference in 2014? In other words, the year before this one, where the reference was made?
It would only be managers that would go to those.
Right. Do you remember whether anybody, like a manager, went to the LABC conference in 2014?
I wouldn't know.
Right. Did anybody come back from that conference, or was there any word in the office about what had been learnt at that conference about the cladding having to be of limited combustibility?
No, I don't recall any of that.
Right. Did Mr. Annon share the information from this 2015 London District Surveyors General Meeting with you?
I don't recall ever seeing that.
Can I then turn to a different topic, which is regulations and guidance? Now, in general terms, Mr. Hoban, would I be right in thinking that as a building surveyor with some 35 years of experience or so, you were familiar with the requirements of Schedule 1 Part B to the Building Regulations 2010?
Yes.
And would you also be familiar with the guidance in Approved Document B?
Yes.
Did you deal with Part B of the Building Regulations and Approved Document B regularly as part of your role as a surveyor within the BCO?
Yes.
Yes. And what about Parts B3 and B4 specifically?
Yes.
Yes. Now let's just examine ADB in a little bit more detail. And I want to focus on external fire spread, if I may.
Yeah.
Can I ask you please to go to CLG 50173, please, which is ADB, and invite you to look at page 95. And that's the first page up there. 95 is section 12, construction of external walls. And if we look at the bottom right-hand side of that, or bottom right-hand corner, we can see, if you go down, external wall construction, and then underneath that, paragraph 12.5.
Yes.
Were you familiar with that part of ADB, that section?
Yes.
So the rule or the guidance, external envelope of a building should not provide a medium for fire spread if it's likely to be a risk to health or safety. That was something you knew well, did you?
Yes.
Yes. And then it says in the next paragraph, well, I should read it all. The use of combustible materials in the cladding system and extensive cavities may present such a risk in tall buildings. External walls should either meet the guidance given in paragraphs 12.6 to 12.9 or meet the performance criteria given in the BRE report, BR 135, for cladding systems using full-scale test data from BS 8414 of 2002 or 2005. Did you understand from this, at the time of the Grenfell Tower project and your involvement in it, that ADB contained essentially 2 potential routes to compliance with the functional requirement of B4, Part B4 of the building regulations?
It gave you 4 options as far. You could use the approved document B, you could do a desktop study, you could offer a fire engineering solution, or you could use BR 135.
Now, which of those routes to compliance was followed on Grenfell Tower?
At the time, I thought it was approved document B.
And what do you mean by that in detail? Will you just explain?
That the actual panels themselves were Class O. That the insulation was suitable for use on buildings of that height. and that cavity barriers would be provided in the appropriate location.
And when you say that the insulation was suitable for use on buildings of that height, what do you mean by that?
Well, the information that I looked up on the LABC website said that the Celotex RS 5000 was suitable for use on buildings of that height.
Was there any suggestion, we'll come back to that later on, but was there any suggestion that the applicant for building control approval on Grenfell Tower was relying on BR 135 and the test criteria under 8414 to demonstrate compliance?
Not that I recall.
Right. So do I take it from that answer and the previous answer that when it came to the insulation, you thought that the materials being used were of limited combustibility?
No. In fairness, I should have asked for I realise now that I should have asked for a full report, but at the time, I consider the information that I looked up on as regards the Celotex, it was suitable for use on that, or for a building of that height.
Right. Well, we'll come back to that, but I just want to get your answer clear at this stage. Did you think that the Celotex RS 5000 complied because it was of limited combustibility, or complied because it was it had passed an 8414 test in accordance with BR 135?
I considered it okay by reading the information on the LABC website.
I'm sorry, that's not
Yeah.
quite an answer to my question.
Yeah.
Did you think that the Celotex complied because it was a material of limited combustibility?
No.
Or because it had passed a BS 8414 test in accordance with BR
8414.
Yes. I see. So when you answered my question a moment ago, whether the applicant for building control was relying on BR 135 and 8414, I think you said no. Is that right, or is it wrong?
Sorry, could you repeat that again, please?
Yes. You said, I think, in answer to an earlier question, was whether there was a suggestion that the applicant for building control approval on Grenfell Tower was relying on BR 135 and an 8414 test.
Yes.
So what is your evidence?
That they were relying on the material as a BS 8414, meeting the criteria for that and suitable for use on buildings over 18 metres.
Right. So that was the route to compliance.
Yeah.
Not, as you put it earlier, ADB.
Yes, sorry. Yes.
I see. Can we then move on a little bit, staying on this page, to the question of external surfaces? This is regulated by section 12.6, and it says the external surfaces of walls should meet the provisions in diagram 40. So we don't need the rest of that.
Yeah.
If we go to diagram 40, it's on page 97, and can we just look together at it slowly? Here it is. And if you look at E, I mean, it's divided up into 5, A, B, C, D, and E is in the middle, and it says any building.
Yes.
And we can see the requirement for a building that is more than 1 metre from a relevant boundary here, don't we?
Yes.
With a part of it which is above 18 metres.
Yes.
And is it right that, well, did you understand there that the guidance says that above 18 metres, the external wall surface classification should be class 0, national class?
Yes.
Or class B, S3, D2 or better, which is the
Yes.
European standard?
Yes.
You understood that?
Yes.
Yeah. Did you know at the time of your involvement in Grenfell what those classifications meant?
Yes.
What did they mean?
Well, a Class O was a combination of two tests, fire propagation test and the surface spread of flame test.
Yes, and that's
As
just to be clear. That's. Are you able to give us the numbers?
BS 476 Part 6 and BS 476 Part 7.
Yes.
And then from that, they would give a standard, whether it met that.
Right. And those are the tests.
Yes.
Were you aware of the different ways in which National Class Naught could be achieved?
Only through what I've just said.
Right. The reason I ask is because there is some further guidance in Appendix A, and I'd just ask you to look at that. It's page 120 of approved document B, page 120. And I just want to look with you at Appendix A.
Yeah.
Not sure that's the right reference, actually. Well, I'll come back to that later on, perhaps. But do you recall? Well, there it is. Actually, it's there. It's there. I want to. Yes. If you look at paragraph 5, you can see where the relevant tests are set out, and then the European tests as well. Do you also recall that there is a paragraph in approved document B which deals with linings?
Yes, there is.
And were you aware that class naught could be achieved if the material was of limited combustibility throughout?
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Right. Okay. Well, we may perhaps don't need to find it. If we go back to paragraph 12.6, we can see, this is back to pages 95 and 96, that there's a reference there to external surfaces of walls. Did you have a view at the time of what that meant, what external surfaces of walls meant?
The actual surface itself.
And at the time of the Grenfell Tower refurbishment, did you understand that that requirement, under paragraph 12.6, applied to the rain screen, the panels?
To the external surface.
When you say the external surface, do you mean to the panels or to the external surface of the panels?
The external surface of the panels.
Thank you. And if we go on, please, to paragraph, or section 12.7 on page 96, please. This deals with insulation materials stroke products. And it says, in a building with a story 18 metres or more above ground level, any insulation product, filler material, not including gaskets, sealants and similar, etc., used in the external wall construction should be of limited combustibility. See Appendix A. This restriction does not apply to masonry cavity wall construction, which complies with diagram 34 in section 9. At the time of Grenfell Tower and your involvement in it, what did you understand the phrase limited combustibility to mean?
That would be in accordance with the test. I think it's either BS 476 Part 4 or BS 476 Part 11. One's for non-combustibility and the other one's for limited combustibility.
Right. And at the time of your work on Grenfell Tower, how did you understand that provision, 12.7, to apply to a rain screen cladding system?
Well, the insulation would the insulation should be of limited combustibility. As I referred previously, it said that it was suitable for use on buildings over that height because it passed the other test.
Well, the 8414 test?
Yes.
Yeah, well, as I say, we'll come back to that. You just mentioned insulation. Can I just ask you whether you agree that paragraph 12.7 also applies to products with an insulating core, such as window infill panels, for example?
Yes.
What about insulating materials which are packed behind window surrounds? Would that be covered by 12.7?
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
Yes. Did you think at the time of your involvement in the Grenfell Tower project that insulating materials which are used to pack window surrounds or used behind window surrounds?
Inside or outside?
Well, that's a good question. But window surrounds,
Yeah. Around the outside?
forming part of a rain screen cladding system.
It would have to comply with that.
Yes. And what about insulating materials packed into cavities which are created by the overcladding system or scheme?
Yes.
At the time of the refurbishment, did you have any views or thoughts about the relationship between the requirements of paragraph 12.7 and a composite panel, an ACM composite panel with a PE core?
It's not something I considered at the time.
Right. Do you...
Sorry.
It was something you considered, or it's not
Not. As I say, I was concerned that it had the surface spread of flame. The actual that it was Class O. I didn't consider the material inside at the time to be a filler material. My understanding of filler material at the time was filler material to make good joints and to round the, as I say, to finish off the insulation, as it were.
Thank you.
Was it your understanding at the time of your involvement in the Grenfell Tower refurbishment that when a building has a story with a floor level over 18 metres in height, that paragraph 12.7, as we can see here, applies to the whole of the external wall construction and not only to those parts above 18 metres?
Yes, in this particular case, yes.
Yes. Now, finally, on this topic, I want to look very briefly, if we can, about what is said in ADB about cavity barriers.
Yeah.
All right? Can we look at page 96 at paragraph 12.8 under the heading cavity barriers, just below where we were looking? And it says, cavity barriers should be provided in accordance with section 9. Now, we're going to come on to look at this later on in your evidence, but at this point, I just want to ask you, did you understand at the time that cavity barriers were required in the cladding?
Yes.
And just breaking that up a bit, first of all, at the line of the compartment floors and walls?
Yes.
And what about around openings, such as windows?
Yes.
Yes. And what about at the junction of the top of the cladding and the crown of the building? Did you think...
I didn't, at the top, yes. I didn't consider we had control of the crown because it wasn't a concealed space.
So you didn't have... You say, I didn't consider we had control of the crown?
Yes.
Because it wasn't a concealed space. I'm not sure I follow that. Are you saying that the crown was outside your remit as a building control officer?
My understanding of the regulations was that cavity barriers were for concealed spaces.
Right. That I think I do understand, but I think the answer to my question, that the crown itself wasn't outside your remit as a building control officer. You were still required, were you not, to assess whether or not...
Oh, yes, I did assess it, sorry.
No, that's fine.
Yes.
But I think the point you were making, if I've understood you correctly, was that there was no concealed space in the crown that would require a cavity barrier within the crown. Is that
Yes.
the point?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Annon, in his statement, this is Rbk 3028987, page 3, paragraph 12, says in that paragraph that Rbkc Building Control was generally informed of any changes and updates to the building regulations and guidance by the LABC. Is that correct?
Yes, as far as I can recall.
Do you recall having access to a provider called IHS?
Yes.
Were you aware that technical and other information concerning the building regulations was available online via IHS?
Yes.
Did you access information such as that yourself?
From time to time, yes.
When did you do so? What would prompt you to do so?
If I wanted to look up a product sometimes,
I see.
I would do that.
Do you remember whether you did so for the general purposes of the, or specific purposes of the Grenfell Tower?
Not that I can recall.
Right. Did the information which came through the IHS website include any information on fire safety?
We would look at, I would use it when I was looking up products or particular information. I don't think we actually got, as it were, bulletins, for want of a better word.
Right. Do you recall using the IHS information source to look up information on fire safety generally or specifically in relation to any query you had on the Grenfell Tower project?
Not that I can recall.
Right. Mr. Chairman, we're going to move to a slightly different topic, not a hugely different topic, nonetheless a different one, which I won't finish before a natural break. It might be convenient to take a break now.
Yes. Could we say 25 to 12 to give Mr. Hoban time to get back to the room and
Yes.
break?
Yes.
Yes. Mr. Hoban, we're going to take a break at this point. I hope you've been holding up all right so far anyway.
Yes, thank you.
We'll stop now and come back at 25 to 12.
Right.
Please, while you're out of the room, don't talk to anyone about your evidence or anything relating to it.
Right.
All right? If you go with the usher, this will look after you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right, just a minute, 25 to 12.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good. Would you ask Mr. Hoban to come back in, please? Right, Mr. Hoban, ready to carry on?
Yes.
Good, thank you. Yes, Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Hoban, at the very start of your evidence, you referred to your police witness statement
Yes.
and a comma.
Yes.
And I've been helpfully taken by your legal representative to this comma at page 12. This is HOB 50219. I just want to clear that out of the way before we go back to your substantive evidence. Can you be shown that document at page 12? And if you look at the second paragraph break, you'll see a third paragraph which starts, "My role did not involve." Do you see that?
Yes.
And then there's a second sentence which says, "In relation to the fire safety, comma, risk assessment and management of the building, comma, I had no involvement in that." Can you help us? Which is the comma?
It's the comma after safety.
Fire safety.
Yes.
And do you want the comma there or not there?
Remove, please.
Right, so that should read, "In relation to the fire safety risk assessment
Yes.
and management of the building."
Correct.
Is that correct?
Correct.
Thank you very much. Can I then go back to your evidence on technical matters? I want to turn to the question of what you knew about industry guidance, please. Were you familiar with the detail of BR 135 at the time of your involvement in the Grenfell Tower refurbishment?
I was aware of the document, but I hadn't read it substantially.
Right. You hadn't read it substantially. Is BR 135 something that you would normally be required to refer to regularly as part of your role or not?
No.
Not.
That was the first time I'd come across it.
You say that was the first time. When was the first time you came across it?
Sorry. I was aware of it being in the regulations
Right. And is that because it's referred to in
in the approved document.
which we looked at before?
Yes.
Yes.
What it is, there's in various approved documents, it refers to various British standards in relation to many aspects of the regulations.
Right. Have you or had you ever read it at all?
No,
Right.
not. I was aware of the document, but I hadn't.
Right. Well, let's see how we go with this. So we could maybe we can take this a little bit more quickly then. Can I show you the document? It's BRE 405554, please. Now, this is the second edition, published in 2003. There was a third edition published in 2013, Mr. Hoban. This is the first page of it. If we can go to page 7, please. There's a reference to a building, Garnock Court, Irvine, under Figure 1. And this publication followed the fire in that building in the summer of 1999. Were you aware that there had been a tower block fire in Scotland in 1999, which had given rise to the production of BR 135?
I may
This is
have.
the second edition.
I may have seen it in the news on television.
Right, I see. Can we then go to page 9, please? Page 9, where the document explains the mechanism of rapid fire spread up a building, and it explains it both in text and with a picture.
Yes.
Were you familiar, perhaps from other reading, with this picture or diagram and what it's showing?
No, not at the time.
Did you understand at the time the general proposition that cladding systems can create the opportunity for rapid unseen flame spread, causing an unacceptable risk to the occupants?
I may have been, or I would have been aware of it, but not. It wasn't in the forefront of my thoughts.
Right. Did you know that there were principles such as these which warn that external cladding systems offer a potential route for fire spread through multi-storey buildings, and that close attention should be paid to the installation of cavity barriers which would inhibit the spread of flame?
Yes.
and specifically do so in the event of a fire involving an external cladding system?
Yes.
You did. And were you aware in general, and we could take this from page 10, paragraph 3, but under the heading cavities, were you aware of the general principle shown by figure 4, that if flames become confined or restricted by entering cavities within the external cladding system, they can become elongated as they seek oxygen and fuel to support the combustion process?
I was... sorry, could you repeat the question?
Well, I can do it by reference to the text, actually, in the middle of the
Yeah.
page. Under the dot, cavities, the bullet point there,
Yeah.
which is under the heading interaction with external envelope.
Yeah.
In the third line it says, if flames become confined or restricted by entering cavities within the external cladding system, they will become elongated as they seek oxygen and fuel to support the combustion process. This process can lead to flame extension of 5 to 10 times that of the original flame lengths, and this is in bold, regardless of the materials used to line the cavities. This may enable fire to spread rapidly unseen through the external cladding system if appropriate fire barriers have not been provided, and there's a reference to figure 4.
Oh, yes.
You knew the principle even if you didn't know the text?
Yes.
You did, right.
Yes.
Then in the same vein, same page, under paragraph 5, it refers to the fire service intervention, and it says, where the external cladding system is not significantly contributing to the spread of fire from one story to then intervention by emergency services should prevent continued fire propagation by way of the building envelope. However, it says, and this is the important bit, where the external cladding system is contributing to the fire propagation rate, the potential exists for the fire to affect multiple stories simultaneously, thus making firefighting more difficult. Again, although you didn't read the text of this at the time, were you aware of that as a general principle?
By seeing fires on the news, yes.
By seeing fires on the news. Can you help me with that? When did you first see fires on the news that you're...
Well, one that comes to mind was the Dubai fire.
Now, you say the Dubai fire. In fact, there was at least one, there were 2 fires in 2015. Were you aware of earlier cladding fires on high-rise buildings?
Yes.
There were some in the UAE in 2012 to 13. Were you aware of those, do you think, at the time?
They'd been on the news, yes.
Right. They'd been on the news. Did you see those?
I couldn't say. I would expect myself to have seen those on the news.
Okay. Well, we'll come back to some specific examples later on in your evidence, but I'll note the answer for this purpose. Can we just move on to page 17 of this document, please? And I just want to look with you at this section which says system-specific details, ventilated cavities. And in the third paragraph down there, it says, once the fire is within the cavity, it may propagate unseen through the system if adequate fire barriers are not employed. This may result in significant risk of system collapse or fire breakout at significant distances from the fire origin. Now, again, were you aware of that as a general principle, even if not the specifics of the text?
Yes.
Yes. And then under the heading, same page, of performance of materials in fire, insulation, it says the performance of insulating material when subjected to this type of fire scenario has been outlined in the previous section. Typically, non-combustible materials are used in these systems, as it is difficult to prevent fire entering the cavity and spreading through the insulating material. Again, same question, Mr. Hoban. Were you aware of that as a general principle, if not the text?
Yes.
And then at the bottom of page 17, under the heading External Panel, it says materials used for external panels can vary from non-combustible through to combustible, and then there's a first bullet point. Non-combustible materials and materials of limited combustibility, and that's a heading, as defined in tables A6 and A7 of approved document B. And then it says typically cementitious-based products through to natural products such as stone veneers and coated metal panels. And then if you look at the next page, in the last 2 sentences, it says metal panels such as aluminium may fall from the
we haven't caught up with you, Mr. Millett.
I'm sorry, mine.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes,
mine has. Sorry.
Yes, we have. No, that's right.
Perhaps a difference of speed. do you see, just 4 lines up from the end of that, it says, metal panels such as aluminium may fall from the system if the strength of the fixings is affected by the local fire source. They may also melt, generating molten metal debris if exposed directly to the sustained flame envelope. Again, were you familiar with that as a principle, if not the text of this particular guidance document?
Not at the time.
Right. Now, that's the 2003 edition. As I said before, there was an edition published in 2013, and that's at CEL 403364. I just want to identify 1 or 2 further things in this document, which was a revision. Just to be clear, I think you said you didn't read this document before the Grenfell Tower project, or at the time. Can we just jump to page 11 and look at paragraph 2.1? In the 3rd paragraph down, it says that there are potentially conflicting requirements. You see that?
Yes.
It says these potentially conflicting requirements are highlighted in the area of innovative materials and designs which are being driven by the need to construct more energy efficient and sustainable buildings. In order to meet these design challenges, the range of new and innovative materials and designs of systems being offered as potential solutions has also increased the volumes of potentially combustible materials being used in external cladding applications. So, is that something, I know you weren't aware of the text of at the time, but is that a principle or view, understanding that you were aware of?
It's not something I considered at the time.
Right. And then looking at page 13, if we can, this is in the context of external cladding systems offering a route for fire spread through multi-storey buildings and the need for cavity barriers, similarly to what we saw in the 2003 edition. In paragraph 3.3.2 on that page, it says this: cavities may be incorporated within an external cladding system or may be formed by the delamination or differential movement of the system in a fire. If flames become confined or restricted by entering cavities within the external cladding system, they will become elongated as they seek oxygen and fuel to support the combustion process. And then it says the same thing as the 2003 edition. So again, were you aware of that principle at this time? This is 2013, still being very much a live principle.
Could you go through that again? Sorry.
Yes, of course.
Right.
It's about cavity barriers.
Yes. I was aware that cavity barriers needed to be provided.
Yes. And the reason they did so is because if flames become confined or restricted by entering into cavities in the external cladding system, they'll become elongated as they seek oxygen and fuel to support the combustion process. That's why they're important.
Oh, yes, I'm aware of that.
If you go straight on to page 22, let's look at paragraph 6.4. Well, actually, sorry, can we just move back? Page 19. I'm sorry, I skipped over too fast. Page 19, there's a paragraph I just want to look at with you. This is under the heading of 6.3, System-Specific Details Rendered Systems. And then on the right-hand side of the page, under 6.3.2, Fire Barriers, it says, if fire enters a void in the system, whether that void is created by a fire or is part of an existing design, and the insulation is exposed to the fire source, any combustible material present may become involved, and there is potential for the fire to propagate throughout the system if adequate fire barriers are not installed. Since a cavity is likely to be present behind the insulation boards in LFS, it's important that this potential is recognised and adequate fire stopping is provided using fire barriers or fire stopping details to maintain the system's stability in the case of fire. Is that something you were alive to?
As I say, with cavity barriers, yes.
Yes. And then if we turn to page 19, at paragraph 6.3.4, I think this is the next page, actually. I think, in fact, I don't need that. I just go straight to page 22, paragraph 6.4, probably quicker. Ventilated cavity systems. And in the second paragraph, there. It says, if the fire is able to enter the cavity, it may propagate unseen through the system if adequate fire barriers are not employed. This may result in significant risk of system collapse or in the fire breaking out at significant distances from its origin. Again, was that something you were aware of at the time?
As regards cavity barriers breaking up, yes.
Yes, and it goes on at the bottom of that subparagraph to say, in order to counter the possibility of rapid fire spread and potential system collapse, the design and selection of materials used to construct these systems should address these issues, including the provision of fire barriers. Again, that you took it from that, did you?
Yeah, fire barriers, yes.
Yeah. And then there are a number of other parts of this which say very much the same thing. But if we can look at 6.4.1, performance of materials in fire insulation, as it can be difficult to prevent fire entering the cavity and spreading in these systems, the selection of the insulation materials used and the design of the fire barriers to close these cavities are particularly important. Same question again, Mr. Hoban. Even though you didn't read this text at the time, were you aware that that was a generally applicable principle?
Yes.
Yeah. And then if we look at 6.4.1, lower down, over the column to the last paragraph, just above 6.4.2, it says, do you see, it says combustible panels are typically based on vinyl or glass reinforced plastic. Although various new products are being developed in this area, some of which also contain insulation materials, these products generally have good surface spread of flame characteristics to prevent rapid fire spread across the surface of the system. But once the panels become involved in the fire, they have the potential to generate falling debris, add to the overall fire load, and provide a route for fire to propagate up the outside of the building. Now, that's an important paragraph for our purposes. Was that a principle that you understood and were aware of at the time?
Not at the time.
Right. Do you agree that had you read this document, which, just to be clear, is a 2013 edition, you would have understood that cladding systems can create the opportunity for rapid, unseen fire spread, causing an unacceptable risk of fire to the occupants? And that an external cladding system offered a potential route for fire spread through multi-storey buildings, and that close attention should be paid to the installation of cavity barriers to inhibit the spread of flame?
Yes.
And particularly in the event of a fire involving the external cladding system itself.
Yes.
Yes. And that meant that you would have understood that particular attention should be paid to the selection of insulation materials.
As insulation material, the actual insulation material itself, yes.
Yes. Can I now turn then to a different document or different subject, which is the Bca Guidance. Are you familiar with the Building Control Alliance as a body?
I was aware of it.
Right. Now, were you aware that the Building Control Alliance, or BCA, issued guidance documents for the construction industry?
No, at the time I wasn't.
You weren't aware, right?
No.
Even though it's an alliance or association directly designed to assist and support building control.
I read about it in relation to, I mentioned the performance standards. It brings up a number of bodies on that, but my principal reference bodies were the LHBC and the government body.
Now, we've got you down here as saying LHBC. Do you mean
LABC?
LABC, because there's the NHBC as well, National House Building Council. You're not referring to that in that
No,
sense, are you?
no.
So, to be clear, LABC.
Yeah, Local Authority Building
Right.
Control.
Okay. Now, can we look then, and this may not take long if you weren't familiar with it, at a guidance note produced by the BCA, Technical Guidance Note 18. This is at CEP 30579294, please. And this is, as I say, BCA Technical Guidance Note 18, and it's issue 0, June 2014. Use of combustible cladding materials on residential buildings. Have you ever seen this document before?
I have since the fire,
Right, but not before.
not before the fire.
Right. Did you know about its existence before the fire, even though you...
No.
Right. Did you know at all that the BCA published technical guidance notes for the benefit of its members in the construction industry?
No.
To promote, you didn't?
Not at the time.
Can I then just take you into the chunk of this first page, which deals with key issues? And I just want to show you the last paragraph, a surface spread of flame classification, where it says it doesn't infer any resistance to combustibility. It is solely a measure of the spread of flame across the surface. Did you understand that at the time?
What Class A was to do across the surface, yes.
Yes. And if you go on to the first bullet point under there, it says the thermosetting insulants, rigid polyurethane foam boards, do not meet the limited combustibility requirements of ADB2 Table A7, and so should not be accepted as meeting ADB2 paragraph 12.7. However, if they are included as part of a cladding system being tested to BR135 and BS8414, the complete assembly may ultimately prove to be acceptable. Were you aware of that as a general principle or guidance? You weren't, right? Were you aware, in particular, that thermosetting insulants like PIR don't meet or didn't meet the limited combustibility requirements of ADB2?
At the time, no.
You weren't, right. Can we go then to the June 2015 version of this document, which is CEL 402347. This is issue 1. Do I take it from your earlier answers that you weren't familiar with this document at the time of Grenfell either?
No.
Right. Can I then turn to CWCT? Have you ever heard of the Centre for Windows and Cladding Technology, Mr. Hoban?
Since the fire, yes.
You'd never heard of it before the fire?
No.
Were you? I suppose it would follow that you therefore weren't aware that the CWCT also produced technical guidance relevant to the fire performance of curtain walls and rain screen systems.
No, I wasn't aware.
Right. Did you ever refer to any CWCT guidance work at all in your work on Grenfell?
No, I never used it at all on any
Right.
Building.
Were you not aware that the CWCT standard was specifically provided for in the NBS specification for Grenfell Tower?
I don't believe I actually saw that document.
Really? Can we then turn to your second statement, please? If you go to that second statement and look at page 19, we go to paragraph 48. And this is under the heading Inspections. And you say there, I am not aware of any formal written policy by Rbkc on the subject. However, I am aware that the Building Control Performance Standards, July 2014, produced by the Department for Communities and Local Government, states that the scope and frequency of inspections should be determined and incorporated in a formal written plan. And just for completeness, you say, I decided I would endeavour to conduct site visits once a month. I made this decision based on the scope of the project. I want to talk a little bit with you about the standards, if we can. Those standards, I think, were first published in 2006, weren't they?
Yes, yes.
And then they were revised in July 2014. Yes?
Yes.
Yes. When they were revised in July 2014, do you remember being alerted to that revision?
Not from works. I don't believe when it first came out, we had a detailed meeting about those standards in the office, but I don't recall whether we had a detailed meeting when the Second Amendment came out.
I see. So, yes, in 2006 when they first came out.
Yeah, we had and there was
Right.
Mr. Jackson produced a document as a subsequently upon that document being produced.
So, just so I'm clear, you say Mr. Jackson produced a document.
Yes.
That's in 2006, is it, when those
Yeah.
standards were first promulgated?
Yes.
What about in 2014?
I don't
when they were
recall
revised?
seeing any revised document in the office at that time.
I see. Did you know that there'd been a revision?
Yes.
But you didn't look at it?
I did look at it. Yes.
You did look at it?
Yes.
In 2014?
Yes.
I see. In carrying out your role as building control officer on the Grenfell Tower project, did you have in mind the standards set out in the building control performance standards as revised in July 2014?
I think generally they were the same. As I say, we had detailed discussions, and we had, as I say, there was a document. I was aware, as I say, of the 14 Amendment. I can't say how much detail I went into, but I was aware of the documents.
Yes, I follow. Well, let's be a little bit more specific. Can we look at the 2014 standards themselves now?
Yeah.
They are at CLG 1306814. And that's the first page, and you can see the date at the bottom, July 2014, published by the Building Control Performance Standards Advisory Group, forming part of the DCLG at the time. And if you go to page 4, internal page 2 of this document, page 4 of the document on the screen, you can see the introduction there. And in the penultimate paragraph on that page, it says in the last sentence, the standards and supporting guidance establish the level of performance considered as a minimum in carrying out those tasks so that a building control body's duties and responsibilities under the legislation are adequately discharged. So, did you understand that this document was essentially setting out the minimum standard for building control officers to discharge their statutory functions?
It's not something that strikes me immediately, but obviously it says it there.
Right. Can we go on to page 11 then? This is standard 3, consultation, and the standard is there in the green box. The building control body shall undertake all statutory consultations in a timely manner, and the observations of consultees shall be communicated in writing to the clients. It shall also consider the benefit of undertaking additional consultation. It shall, where appropriate, cooperate in an integrated approach to consents relevant to development control. Now, just breaking that down a bit, if we can. Statutory consultation, did that include consultation with, for example, the fire authority, in this case, the LVEPA?
Correct.
Yeah. And it says an integrated approach to consents relevant to development control. Would that be planning permission? Or the planning department?
Sorry.
It's the last part of the second sentence. Third sentence, I'm so sorry. In the green box, it shall, where appropriate, cooperate in an integrated approach to consents relevant to development control. Would that be planning permission?
Yes, it would.
Right.
Although it doesn't say planning development control.
No, it says development control. Well, I know you perhaps weren't familiar with this specific document in its revised form, but let me try it this way. In your experience, as it stood in the years from 2013 onwards, would the planning department provide information to building control about a development?
Only if they had a specific question on a matter.
Right. What about in circumstances where an application was made to the planning department for approval of a material to be used on the outside of a high-rise building?
No.
That wouldn't come to the building control department?
No.
So does that mean that there wasn't an integrated approach to consents relevant to development control?
Yes.
Right. And to be specific about this, as we know from the record in relation to the Grenfell Tower refurbishment, if the planning department at Rbkc had been told that ACM panels were to be used on Grenfell Tower as a high-rise residential building, would that be the sort of information that should be shared back with building control by the planning department?
I would say that's a matter for the planners to decide whether it's their policy to do that.
But in your position as a building control officer, in respect of a development or refurbishment over which you had building control responsibility, would you expect Rbkc's planning department to alert you to any design or planning matters such as the application of ACM on the exterior of a high-rise building, that would be something which would fall within building control's remit, so that you could have an integrated approach?
It would. Yes, it would.
It would. You'd expect it to be shared with you, would you?
Yes.
Can we look on then to Standard 5, which is on page 13? And we can see there, again in the green box, which is where we see these standards, and this is under the heading Assessment of Plans. If you just look at the green box itself, just read what's in there, just take a moment to do that. And I just want to ask you to look at the guidance underneath it. If you look at the first paragraph under the guidance, sitting under the green box, it says, the purpose of plan assessment and design appraisal is to assist the process of achieving compliance of building work with the building regulations. Accordingly, contraventions of building regulations identified in drawings should be communicated in writing to the designer. A written opinion should be issued on all proposals submitted for assessment.
Yes.
Would that be, in your understanding, a formal opinion, or would advice by email suffice in order to comply with the standard?
It could be either.
Could be either. Looking down at the fourth paragraph, it says, if plans are passed or approved subject to conditions, a schedule written in clear and unambiguous terms outlining the necessary modifications and or of the further plans or information required to demonstrate compliance should be issued to the client. So does that mean that a record of the conditions should be made and kept?
Yes.
Now the guidance also says that records of the plan assessment process should be kept. Is that not just a record of the formal decision, but a record of the building control officer's review of the plans themselves?
Yes.
Yes. And in terms of record keeping at Rbkc, we know there was a computer system called Accolade.
Yes.
Acolaid. How, in general terms, was that used for managing full plans applications at the time of the Grenfell Tower project, and specifically 2012 to 14 in this case?
When an application came in, it was assessed by a manager, whether it was a valid application or not, and then it was sent to the business support group to put on the system, and then a file would be produced, and then it would come to the surveyor. And then an assessment of the plans would be done. There may be discussions and meetings in the course of that particular period.
I see. And would all that be done through the Accolade system? So all these communications would be on the Accolade system?
That I'm not certain of.
Right. How did you decide, or did the Building Control Department decide what went on to Accolade and what didn't?
As regards what particular things?
Well, as regards specifically managing full plans applications.
Well, I know they would enter the details of the agent. That would be done by business support when the application came in. As regards what information came in, whether that would be a business support matter.
Right. I'm not quite sure that's really answered my question. Let's try it a different way. Accolade is an information system.
Yes.
Who decided what should go onto it, or what shouldn't go onto it?
That would be a manager. Well, we would as a surveyor put information relating to inspections. Decision notices would be processed by business support, and the actual application itself would be put on the system once it was validated by a manager.
I see. Now, can we look at your second witness statement, please? And I want to go to paragraph 18D. There we see, there on page 6, did you run a building control tracker for Grenfell Tower? No, I used a plan check record sheet instead, you say.
Yes.
What kind of matters would you record on the plan check record sheet?
Sorry, it's been a while since I've done. What I looked at, I haven't got that form in front of me anymore, so it was a form that had been adopted some years previously. So you would be considering the application under the various approved documents.
Right.
And I don't know whether it would go on about consultations or not, because as I said, I don't have that form to hand. But as regards consultations, I would send all the proposals to the fire regulation group, and they would
Right.
consider the application.
What did a plan check record sheet look like? Just in
It was
outline.
an A4 sheet divided into the various
Right.
elements, as I say, A, structure, B, fire, C, damp proofing and
Right.
contamination.
And was it a record of what you looked at, or was it a record of a plan you had to look at things?
It would be of the actual application itself.
Oh, I see. And where did you keep the plan check record sheet?
That would be in the
Generally.
file,
In the file. Was it kept on computer or handwritten or hard copy?
handwritten.
I see. Now, the inquiry doesn't have a copy of your plan check record sheet for the Grenfell Tower refurbishment. Do you remember whether it was retained on the hard copy file, or what might have happened to it?
I don't know.
Now, you've also referred in your statement to keeping records in a notebook. Was that your A3 notebook?
Yes, I would have a number of these books. I would use those.
Did you ever transfer the notes in your notebook onto the Accolade system?
I did, although there are, from what I've seen, there's some notes missing of both myself and colleagues.
Right. Can you explain why that might be?
I can't. As I say, I don't know. I would generally put the notes in either on the day or a few days later.
Right.
Sometimes notes. If you didn't tick the box and went on to another job, it may not retain them. But I certainly know that I did more visits than was reflected on Accolade.
Indeed, and we're going to come to that in detail later in your evidence. But when you say, from what you've seen, there's notes missing, both myself and colleagues, does that mean that you think they're missing from the Accolade system because you didn't put them in?
At the time, I thought I put all my notes in.
Right. But did you have a practice of entering your handwritten notes into the content of those notes into the Accolade system?
Yes, I would, as I say, do it if I had time on that day, or sometimes I would come in at weekends to do my notes.
Right. Do you remember any times when you let that practice lapse and failed to enter your notes onto the Accolade system?
Not that I'm aware. As I say, there was a lot going on outside work at the time, so I don't know whether there could have been events where I didn't. But generally, I was very good, because what I would do, I would get my book and put a line through the notes as I put them on.
But I think what you're telling us is that it's possible at this time that some notes, on some occasions, may not have been transferred to the Accolade file.
Maybe.
I mean,
as I say, it's not consistent with the way that I would do work.
Did you mark up drawings or other documents on the physical file?
Yes. Well, what I would do when I was reviewing a drawing, I would actually initial and date when I looked at it, and then I would highlight anything that would concern me.
Right. Let's just look at what you say in your second statement about that. It's page 8, please. If we can look at paragraph 27, you say there, at the very top of the page, perhaps we just look at the question you're answering at the bottom of the previous page, first of all. The question is, did you review the proposed design for the exterior cladding on the tower? If so, when did you do that, and where is that recorded? And then if we can go to the top of page 8, you say, yes, I did. I would have recorded this either on my plan check record sheet or my physical diary, or other notes kept on file. I just want to ask you about the other notes kept on file. What are those?
So, if I went to... I remember going to a meeting in the first initial meeting, and I made certain notes of that meeting and kept that on file. Made my own notes of things that were discussed.
Right.
I have asked for some minutes. Unfortunately, it would appear that no minutes were done at that meeting.
And why were those not transferred to the Accolade system?
You couldn't. Accolade was for site visits. As I say, it wasn't.
It wasn't for private notes of meetings internally. I follow that. If you also look at in the statement to page 10, you can see paragraph 33E there. You refer to your A3 notebook.
Yeah.
And you say that Rbkc cannot locate my notebook. Was that a number of notebooks you kept?
It was. As I say, it would be, as I filled in one, I'd get another.
Yes. I think you also had a physical diary. Was that different from your notebook, or was that the notebook?
I had that, and I obviously had my Outlook calendar, and there was a system where we would have to put on all surveyors had to put on their daily visits, so that people were aware where people were.
Yes. So, in total, just so that we're all clear about where you would record things. So we've got Accolade.
Yes.
We've got your Outlook diary.
Yes.
We've got a physical diary.
Yes.
I think we've also got your notebook you've referred to,
Yeah.
a plan check record sheet, and then the file itself. Have I missed
Sorry.
anything out?
Could you go over those again,
Yes, of course.
please?
First, so there is Accolade.
Yes,
Yes.
that would show.
We've got your Outlook diary,
Outlook calendar, yes.
calendar.
Yeah.
Then we've got your physical diary, which you referred
Correct.
to a moment ago. Then there's the notebook, the A3 notebook you've referred to, or
That-
notebooks
yeah.
you've referred to. There's the plan check record sheet, which we discussed earlier, for looking at applications. And then finally, the file itself, the physical file.
Well, the plan check would be in the file.
I follow.
Yeah.
Other than that, were there any other places where you would record discussions or your findings or inspections?
No, I can't think of any other.
Right.
places.
Can we then go back to the standards we were looking at earlier on, which we'll find at CLG, this is the July 2014 edition, CLG 1306814, please, and go to page 15. Now, this relates to site visits, site inspections, as you can see, and we're going to be going through your site inspections on the Grenfell Tower project in due course in a lot of detail. But just looking at this standard, you can see that it says that standards need to be adequate and that sufficient records are kept. You see that?
Yeah.
It's a stat, I've summarised it perhaps a little bit quickly, but that's the effect of the green box. And if we look at page 16, under inspection frequency, you can see the little mini heading there just below the bullet points halfway down the page. It says the scope and frequency of inspection should be determined and incorporated in a formal written plan. You see that?
Yes.
Do you remember whether that was done as a matter of course
No.
within the building control department overall?
I don't believe it was.
It wasn't. Right. Do you know why it wasn't?
It just wasn't done that.
No, I know,
way.
but do you know why?
No.
Did you ever raise this issue with John Jackson or John Allen or anybody else within the Rbkc
No.
building control
No,
department?
it was the way that it was done in the office.
Right. So without a formal written plan, how would you go about planning the scope and frequency of inspections?
Generally, as I say, I decided for that particular job that I would visit every month.
Right.
As regards other jobs, it would depend on what was going on, the standard of workmanship,
Right.
and generally what the standard of the builder or the type of work that was going on at the time. Because again, with basements, there'd be a bigger frequency because you're looking at structural matters.
And you decided on once a month at the start of the project. Did you review that constantly? Did you review the sufficiency of once a month constantly through the life of the project?
I did review it in relation to I got an addition. Well, I got additional work when colleagues left the department. I actually got their areas. A couple of my colleagues, one left or not left. She went to go and work in the planning department in, I think it was 2014. So the number of jobs that I was dealing with increased. So I was having to look after more jobs, and it would, as I say, depend on whether there was site supervision, what the builders were like.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I understand that that might be an exception, but once you'd fixed a frequency of visits for a particular project, am I right in thinking that in general you didn't go back and review that?
Oh yes,
You did?
Yes, I would,
Right.
depending on what was going on.
And would anybody supervise your initial assessment of the frequency of visits required for a project?
No,
So you were just left to your own devices, were you?
correct.
Right. I think it would follow then from what you've told us before that the next paragraph down, which says all sites should be inspected frequently and gives a frequency that's suggested there, that wasn't guidance adopted generally within Rbkc, was it?
No, it wasn't.
No. Can we then turn to a different topic, which is your knowledge of high-rise products, so high-rise buildings and relevant products. If we look at your first statement, please, which is RBK 3033934, page 10. I wanted just to look at paragraph 99 on that page. And you say there, in the fourth line from the end, at the time of the Grenfell refurbishment, I had approximately 35 years' experience and had previously overseen high-rise projects under the London Building Act and constructional bylaws in force at the time. In general, do you remember when those projects took place?
From time to time, I dealt with sort of flat refurbishments and refurbishments of hotels from time to time. I couldn't give you exact dates, but because it would, as I say, I don't actually recall any particular time. But when I was working in Chelsea, prior to moving up to the top of the borough in 1998, I do recall dealing with some refurbishments of some hotel rooms on a hotel in Sloane Street. I also did, when I moved up to the Notting Hill area, I dealt with a couple of flat refurbishments on a tower block in Notting Hill.
Right.
But as I say, the dates I
Right.
tell you.
In relation to the high-rise projects that you identify in this part of your first statement, did any of those involve the recladding or overcladding of a high-rise residential tower?
No.
So would it follow from that the Grenfell Tower refurbishment was the first time as a building control officer you had come across the overcladding of an existing and occupied high-rise residential building?
Yes.
Right. Coming back to the topic of previous high-rise fires, we discussed Garnet Court in Scotland, Irvine, in 1999. Were you aware of a fire early on in that decade, in 1991, at Knowsley Heights?
Yes, in the news, I remember it all.
Right.
Sorry to hesitate. I believe I would have seen it in the news at that time.
Right, in the early 1990s.
Yes.
Yes. What about the fire in a building called the Mermoz Tower in Roubaix in France in 2012?
That I don't recall.
Right. What about the fire in the Wuxin Golden Suites in Busan, South Korea in 2010?
That, again, doesn't.
Right. Now, we discussed earlier, very briefly, fires in Dubai.
Yeah.
Let's just take this in stages. Do you recall a spate of fires in high-rise buildings in the UAE, the United Arab Emirates, in the period 2012 to 2013, particularly in Sharjah and in Dubai at that time?
I do recall seeing, as I say, one particular one, whether, as I say, were they close together?
In time, yes.
Yes,
And geographically, yes, two are in Dubai.
Yeah, but in time.
Yes. I mean, they were carried on the BBC News.
Yes, as I say.
Some of them were, so you remember those.
Yes.
Do you also remember further fires in Dubai in 2015 at the Address Downtown Hotel and the Torch residential building?
That doesn't come to mind.
Right. Going back then to the fires in the UAE that you became aware of in 2012 to 13, did that tell you anything about the risks of external fire spread on high-rise buildings? You mentioned earlier that it might have done. I just wanted.
Yes.
What did it tell you, do you think?
As I say, as regards that, the thing that came to mind was what were their regulations over there?
Right. And that came to mind, did it? Did you investigate that?
No.
Was there any discussion internally at Rbkc Building Control Department about the fires?
I don't recall.
Right. Do you remember seeing any industry or perhaps internal circulars or any news or industry gossip even about the impact of those fires and what you learned or should learn from them?
No.
Do you remember a fire in Southwark in 2009 in a building called Lakanal House?
Yes.
Did you know about that fire at the time it happened, summer of 2009?
Yes.
You did. And from that fire, did you gain any understanding of how fire can spread up the exterior of a building?
I thought, I saw that it went up the outside, but I didn't know whether the thing that comes to mind with that particular fire was the fire stopping internally.
Right. Did that cause you, that fire, to look at the building regulations and in particular at approved document B?
Not at that time. I would look at fire stopping as part of my duties.
Right. Did the fire itself alert you to the dangers of rain screen cladding systems?
No.
Can I then turn to a different topic, which is the role of building control generally? First, do you agree that the role of a building control body is to check for compliance with the requirements of the Building Act and the building regulations?
Yes.
And that's their only requirement, their only role, is to ensure compliance, to check and ensure for compliance.
We did have many other duties.
Yeah, well, let me be a bit more specific. Do you accept that a building control body has no role to play in the design?
Correct.
Right. And its role is to check submitted proposals
Yes.
and to inspect works on site to ensure compliance
Yes.
with the statutory requirements and guidance?
Yes.
Yes. Do you also agree that it's ultimately for those designing and carrying out building works to ensure that the building regulations are complied with?
Yes.
And that building control approval isn't conclusive evidence that the building regulations have been complied with? But
Could you repeat?
yes. Was it your understanding that the effect of building control approval being given wasn't, as it were, conclusive evidence that the building regulations have been complied with?
It wasn't conclusive.
And I'm going to put a number of propositions to you, and I want to know whether you agree with them. A local authority building control surveyor is required to take such steps as are reasonable to enable him or her to be satisfied within the limits of professional skill and care that the applicable aspects of the building regulations are complied with.
Yes.
Yes. Do you agree that a building control body's ability to do its job properly depends in part on the quality of the information provided to it?
That's one of them.
And do you agree that where there are gaps or contradictions in the information which is submitted to it, a building control body should follow up with questions and investigations of the applicant?
Yes.
Do you also agree that in exercising reasonable skill and care, that would include seeking missing or incomplete information from the applicant?
Yes.
Yes.
I would say that if he didn't know the information himself from
Yes.
investigation.
Now, I don't know how closely you've been following the evidence in this part of the inquiry, Mr. Hoban, but I'll see if I can summarise the point I want to put to you succinctly, but I hope also fairly. TMO, Studio E, Ryden and Harley witnesses have said, either orally or in their witness statements or both, that they relied on building control to ensure that the refurbishment complied with the building regulations. My question is, did you yourself appreciate, at the time of the Grenfell Tower refurbishment and your role in it, that those parties involved in the refurbishment project viewed building control in that way?
No.
I now want to turn to yet again a different topic, which is the structure of the Rbkc Building Control Department. Now, your role during the time of the Grenfell Tower project was, I think, as a senior building control surveyor.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Is that the same as a principal building control surveyor?
No.
Can you just explain the differences to us, please?
Originally a principal building control surveyor was a manager of a team of surveyors. At the time of Grenfell, the principal was a deputy. Also, the principal would deal with more complex projects and manage staff.
And a senior building control surveyor, where would that fit into the hierarchy?
He was generally an area surveyor that would deal with the area that he was dealing with.
I see.
As instructed by managers.
Instructed by managers. And how did a senior building control surveyor relate to a principal building control surveyor?
They were junior to a principal building control surveyor.
Immediately junior?
Yes.
Right. Now, just give me a feel for this. How many senior or principal building control surveyors worked in the Rbkc Building Control Department at the time of the Grenfell Tower project?
There was one principal surveyor.
Yes.
We had, well, the numbers changed because originally in 2013, after our restructuring, we had. Bear with me for a moment, please. We had the head of building control. We had his deputy, who was a principal. There was.
Yes.
There was 3 senior surveyors, and there was 3 building control surveyors. I believe that Colin, who passed away in October 2015, had just been made a senior prior to him passing away.
Yes, I see. Now, in 2013, September 2013 specifically, I think it's right that John Allen was appointed as building control manager, wasn't he?
Correct.
Where did he fit into that structure that you've just explained?
He was the top. He was the
head of BC, was he?
Yes.
Oh, right. And from that time onwards, is it right that John Allen was your line manager, or was there an intervening principal surveyor?
Well, John Allen was my manager, but in his absence, Jose was.
Right. And was Jose a principal building control surveyor?
He was.
Right. I see. So although he was effectively your senior, nonetheless you reported mostly directly to John Allen as the head of BC.
Correct.
Have I got that right?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. So was John Allen also in charge of allocating work within the department?
I think that was done between him and Jose.
I see. And work, I think, as you say, was usually allocated on a patch system.
Correct.
Does that mean that you covered everything in your patch? In other words, a geographical area?
Yes. Although saying that, when I got I was given the responsibility of looking after the academy and the sports centre. That was in Hillary's patch.
Right.
At the time.
And who is Hillary?
Hillary Wyatt.
Right.
She was a colleague that transferred to the planning department.
Did the allocation of work within your patch take into account current workloads, skill, experience, and qualifications?
I was just given the work.
Right. But it may be a question for others, but to your knowledge and understanding at the time, did the allocation of work, which would ordinarily fall within your patch, take account of your workload, for example?
No, or it was given to me.
It was given to you because it was in your patch, regardless of your workload?
Yes.
Right. And regardless of your skill and experience?
Yes.
And regardless of your qualifications or absence of them?
Yes.
Now, I think you said before that, just earlier on in your evidence, that changes were made to the structure of the Building Control Department in 2013.
Yes.
Were you aware that that time that local authority building control services, and particularly Rbkc, were expected to be cost neutral?
Yes.
What did you understand by that idea?
That we had to be self-funding, I believe.
Self-funding?
Yes. There was obviously austerity measures as well that went on.
But prior to September 2013, I think John Allen was in charge of special projects.
Yes.
And does that tell us that before September 2013, special projects were dealt with separately from the general run of building control applications?
Yes.
And from 2013, special projects were then reallocated within the department, were they?
Yes.
And so did those become part of the patch system?
Correct.
So if there was a special project that would normally be dealt with before September 2013 by John Allen as a specialist project, after that date, if it fell in your patch, you would get it?
Yes.
I see. And does that mean, this may sound obvious, but that after September 2013, you were doing special projects that were not part of your day-to-day role before that date?
Yes.
Before September 2013, did you yourself have any experience of working on special projects?
Sorry. Initially, before when the local authority took over the responsibilities of building control, the area surveyor would look after the jobs in his own particular area, but we had a fire regulations group that would deal with the fire regulation matters, and so you would go to them for advice, and they would deal with the aspects of B1, or not B1, Part B.
Right. What would count as a special project?
I don't know if there was a definition. It was generally a major project.
Right. So major and complex project.
Yes.
I see. And my question again, did you yourself, before September 2013, have any experience of working on special projects?
No, not as defined when the group came into when it was set up.
Right. I think CALC, the Kensington Academy and Leisure Centre, I can use that as an abbreviation, was which ultimately came to include Grenfell Tower, was a special project, wasn't it?
It was.
Yes, and therefore, does it follow that Grenfell Tower was itself considered by Rbkc as a special project?
Yes, I would say so.
So, does it follow from that Grenfell Tower was your first special project?
I dealt with the Academy and the Leisure Centre when I was instructed to do so by John Allen.
Right, I see. Now, you, I think, were not John Allen's first choice of building control officer for Grenfell Tower, were you?
I don't know.
Right. Do you know that he initially offered it to Jose Anon?
I wasn't aware of that.
You didn't know that. Did Jose Anon have greater experience in working on special projects than you did?
He may have had, because he was a principal.
Yes.
As I say, he was a principal, so they had greater responsibility. They would deal with the bigger projects.
Were you given any other special projects to work on in and after September 2013?
I was dealing with I don't know whether it'd be classed as a special project. I was given there was a partnership scheme that I was dealing with that involved a number of townhouses, 4 townhouses, a low-rise office building, and a facade retention with I think nine flats, and it was all new build.
Right.
So I was dealing with that as well as the other projects. If that had come along when the special projects group was done, it most probably would have gone to the special projects surveyor.
I see. Now, taking the period from September 2013 onwards, Mr. Hoban, you say in your first statement, and it's paragraph 36, I don't think we need to go to it, that you would take decisions on B2, B3 and B4 issues, and that you would consult with Paul Hanson and John Allen where necessary.
Yeah.
On Grenfell, how often did you consult with John Allen? Just in general terms.
Sorry, I'm trying to think here. I know I asked it. Well, I don't know whether it's consulting. I asked him to do a visit for me because I wasn't available. Because I wasn't available one day, and I spoke with him. Well, not consult. I spoke with him about my work every month. We would have monthly one-to-ones generally, and we would talk about my work.
Yes, I see. And did you talk about your work on Grenfell Tower specifically, or was it a discussion about your workload and general questions?
Just generally.
Right. I'm going to ask you about Paul Hanson separately later on in our discussions together. Can I then turn to a question of austerity? Can I show you paragraph 3 of your first statement on page 1 of that document, your first statement? And you say there, as a result of restructuring, due to austerity measures, the planning department was restructured with substantial cuts to building control. This led to a substantial reduction in the number of employees in building control. Consequently, the remaining employees had their workload increased commensurately. Can you tell us, or give us an idea of the number of employees reduced?
There was 6 surveyors that were due to retire. One of my colleagues, unfortunately, Michael Wing, passed away just before he was due to retire. So we lost John Jackson, who was the head of building control, David Gammon, who was the head of the fire regulations group, who was a principal. We also lost Gary Sharp, who was a principal surveyor. And there was, as I say, Mick Wing, who passed away, Richard Beddoe, who was a senior surveyor, and Alan D'Souza, who was a senior building surveyor.
Right. So you've mentioned 6 names.
Yes.
1 died. 5 retired. Did they retire because of austerity, or did they retire because they were retiring anyway?
No, it was to do with the restructuring.
I see. So 5 in total, essentially. Yeah. And how many did that leave behind? How many building control surveyors were left in the building control department by the end of 2013?
Well, as I said, we had a head of building control. The fire regulations group was just made up of Paul Hanson at that stage, and Jose Anon was the principal, and there was myself, Pavinder Verdi, and Amir Fardoui, who were senior surveyors, those 3, and we had Hilary Wyatt, Colin Ryan, and Celia Burt, who was they were all ordinary building surveyors.
Right. I see.
We introduced. I can't remember when we had an enforcement surveyor. One of my colleagues that worked in the business support team became an enforcement surveyor in, I believe it was 2016. Principally, he was going out and making discoveries.
Okay, so do I take it from that list that all of those people you've mentioned, so Paul Hanson, Jose Anon, Parvinder Verdi, Hilary Wyatt and Colin Ryan, were all there before the restructuring and stayed on?
Yes.
Although Colin Ryan died and
Hilary left and Celia Burt left.
And Celia Burt left, right. So you went from down from about 12 to about 4 or 5?
Area surveyors. Originally we went down to 6
yes.
area surveyors, and then, as I say, Hilary moved to planning, Celia left, and Colin passed away. The last, in 2016, we got the graduate who was taken on as a building control surveyor, Waqas Rashid. But
yes.
He had never worked in a building control office before, so he was starting from scratch as well. I think he had graduated the summer before he joined us. He did some work for a housing association.
Yes. Did the building control department lose staff due to increased competition from the private sector? By which I specifically mean approved inspectors.
I couldn't answer that question. I wouldn't know. As I say, it was mainly to do with cuts, austerity cuts as far as...
Now, you said that... I'm sorry, I may have cut you off at the end of that answer. Do you want to finish that answer?
Had you finished your answer, Mr. Hoban?
Yeah, well, they just... Mr. Jackson put a proposal forward for restructuring the department, and that was approved by the managers and the councillors.
I think you've said that there was an increase in workload resulting from these reductions.
Yeah. Yes.
What impact did that have on your workload in the period after 2013?
Well, it meant that I couldn't visit as frequently as previously. The jobs that I'd been dealing with prior to that.
Did your patch get bigger?
It did.
Right. Do you, when you say the remaining employees had their workload increased commensurately, did that affect the efficiency and thoroughness with which you were able to carry out your role on each project?
Well, I tried to work to the efficiency, but as time progressed, I wasn't able to do, as I mentioned, I wasn't able to do the job as the way I wanted to do it. In that, I wasn't able to visit jobs as much as I wanted to. Also, you're making decisions on sometimes writing emails. Some jobs you would say, for example, if an email came through and you would phone somebody up and say, is this adequate for the purposes of the response to your email? And they would, if they agreed, then you could, as it were, sign that off. Sometimes there were jobs where you would know or consider that there could be issues at a later stage. So I would make certain that these were followed up with emails, in order that if there was an issue at a later stage, you could actually show what had been done previously.
Now, in his evidence to the inquiry, Neil Crawford of Studio E told us, and this is day 11 at page 131, that you had told him that you were supposed to oversee hundreds of projects. Do you remember whether you did say that to him?
No, I don't recall saying that.
Were you overseeing literally hundreds of projects?
No,
at the time?
It would fluctuate towards the end about, I would say, or in 2016, between 120, 130 projects, plus my other duties.
So, although it wasn't hundreds, it was certainly more than 100.
Yes.
Right. Can we just go back to your appraisal for 2015 to 16, which we'll find at Rbkc 48753. I just want to look at page 3 with you. At the bottom of the page, under mid-year comments, can you see that it says covering inspections for surveyors in 2 other areas? And then if you go over the page to page 7, you can see there that on the right-hand side of the page, under manager mid-year, John has already achieved a number of the targets, currently has high workload as covering for 2 other colleagues. You see that?
Yes.
Over what period were you covering for 2 other colleagues?
Hillary left in 2000 or not left, she moved to the planning department sometime in 2014.
Yes.
And Celia Burt left the employment of the council the end of March 2015.
So it was them.
And then Colin passed away in October 2015.
Right.
And I got a percentage of his work.
I see. So in fact, it was 3 colleagues from September 2015. October 2015.
No, October
2015.
Yeah. Yes, it was. Yeah. Yes.
Yes. And what impact did your covering for those 2 and then 3 other colleagues have on your workload?
Well, as I say, I wasn't visiting certain jobs. I was making sort of judgments on who to visit, on who to write to, sort of confirm things.
Right.
So you're making judgments on sort of the level of supervision, the standard of workmanship, whether you worked with particular people in the past, and whether you considered that they were doing what they needed to do.
When you were covering for 2 other colleagues, did that increase the number of projects?
Oh yes.
Right, and then latterly 3. So did the number of projects double and then triple from your base, as it were, in 2013?
As building control surveyors, they had slightly less numbers than myself in their areas. So, as I say, although Colin, in fairness, had quite a big area, and he was dealing with major projects as well, or one particular major project as well. So Colin was working far above, in my opinion, above what was expected of a building control surveyor.
Right. Did you took on 2 other patches, and then another patch?
And then, as I say, I would say maybe a third or slightly more of Colin's area when he passed away.
Can I show you Mr. Allen's statement? That's his first statement. Rbkc 000 at page 3, please. I just want to show you what he says at paragraph 16, and then ask you a question about it before we break. It's the first 6 lines of paragraph 16. He says, typically as the manager, I would meet the area surveyors monthly, check through their monthly job sheets, and in particular what was actually still current, live, to confirm that their workload was manageable. I would always ask if the surveyor needed any help or assistance, but I had great confidence in the team as I had been out with them all, and whilst they all had different approaches to the work and relationships, I found them all to be good and competent. And then it goes on about the files. Did Mr. Allen meet with you monthly to check through your job sheets so as to ensure that your workload was manageable?
I would say he did meet with me monthly, but as regards manageable, that wasn't something that was discussed. I remember in I think it was March or April 2015 when he gave me Hillary's patch, I did ask for help, and I made a number of suggestions as to how to deal with Celia's patch when she left, and
I think you said
none of these were taken up, and I was given Celia's area to look after.
he says he would always ask if the surveyor needed any help or assistance. Did he always ask you if you needed help or assistance?
No, I wouldn't say that.
Right. Just, Mr. Chairman, I've got one very short document just to show the witness, then I can finish off this line of questioning, if that's acceptable. RYD 404218, please. RYD 404218. This is an email of the 8th of May 2014 from Mr. Blake, Stephen Blake, to Simon Lawrence and Zach Maynard. This is an internal Ryden document, and I just want to show you the very last line in the email. It says there at the bottom of the page, P.S. Claire mentioned building control submission as the department is swamped. Use someone else. My question is, at this time, May 14, was the Rbkc building control department swamped?
May 14. I would say for me personally, I was having to come in order to deal with the academy and the leisure centre, because it was a new build and there was quite a lot of work to look at. So it was challenging. You know, I was doing my own area, and as I say, I was doing those two major projects, and the demands, or not the demand, I don't know whether the word demand, that the contractors were looking for. I spent a lot of time looking at those particular projects.
Right. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, is that a convenient moment?
I think it is, yes. Thank you very much. Mr. Hoban, we're going to have a break now so everyone can get some lunch. We'll resume at 2:05, please. While you're out of the room, please don't talk to anyone about your evidence or anything to do with it.
No.
And so if you go with the usher, she'll look after you.
Right.
Thank you very much. Right, 2:05, please.